Today we're hitting a pedigree with Triple H in every WWE game. The cerebral assassin has appeared in over 50 wrestling games, with his first appearance being Acclaim's WWF In Your House from 1996. Damn, that's the year I was born. That's crazy. In Your House was pretty much the successor to WrestleMania, the arcade game, with power-ups and wacky moves and voiceover, stuff like that, and the very first iteration of the pedigree in a wrestling game. Not the best looking one, but we can only go up from here. Up next, WWF Warzone. Okay, maybe I was wrong about only going up from here. No, you know what? Warzone was not that bad, all right? It was pretty bad. No, it was pretty bad. But at least the pedigree is looking a little better than it did, right? Right? Hello? WWF Attitude released a year after Warzone and was a step forward. They added entrances and some voice lines and stuff. Like, you got the pyro in the back for Triple H's entrance now with DX taunt. There's also this entire cutscene where Triple H is doing his, like, "Oh, are you ready?" promo, but he's not talking, so he's just like standing there, and the animation is pretty hilarious. One thing I did appreciate about these games was that to do the finishers, you had to actually like insert a button combination. You know, it's like up, right, X, or down, left, up, B. I don't know, I like that. Whatever. On to the game that had by far the coolest intro to date, WWF WrestleMania 2000. We are on the N64 now, one of my favorite consoles of all time. You got Triple H walking out with China. I mean, we're moving in a good direction here. This was the first wrestling game that actually got me in trouble for how much time I put into it. The pedigree looks great, multiple angles, cinematic shot. My mom used to be mad as hell at me being up till 2 o'clock in the morning on a school night playing this, but it is what it is. To the PS1 we go for WWF Smackdown. We were about to enter a whole new generation of wrestling games here. I mean, look at the beautiful PS1 graphics there. You really can't get any better than that. But no, the game itself is very fun. I got Big Show's ponytail going up Triple H's ass. What more could you really ask for in a game, to be honest? WWF Royal Rumble was a very unique wrestling game released for the Dreamcast. You really don't do singles matches. Like, you have to have a partner with you. I picked Stone Cold, and you could literally just press a button and Stone Cold comes in and does a stunner. Like, it's amazing. But hit the pedigree on Taz. WWF Royal Rumble. This was not a game that I played earlier on in my life. This is something I discovered when I started doing these types of videos, and I don't hate it. Speaking of a game I don't hate, and a game I don't think anybody hates, WWF No Mercy. I mean, for the N64, this was just the holy grail of wrestling games. I mean, there was a lot of great wrestling games on N64. You know, WCW, NWO, a lot of great stuff, but this really took the cake, and I mean, wrestling fans around the world regard this as one of, if not the best wrestling game of all time. But not to be outdone, the SmackDown series came back with another banger. SmackDown 2 Know Your Role. They made the graphics look a little bit better, made some advancements in the gameplay. There's not a huge difference, to me anyway, between, you know, SmackDown 1 and SmackDown 2. As we move forward, though, and you see the advancement of Triple H's entrance, like with the water and the spitting and everything, you're really gonna see just how far we came. Steph, I got this. Steph, I got this. I'm okay. I got this here. Thank you. Oh, maybe I don't got it. The SmackDown series was off to a good start with those first 2 entries, but then completely out of left field comes WWF Betrayal. Definitely the most unique game we have on this entire list. Stephanie has been kidnapped, Vince McMahon tells me. Oh my God, who took her? Rocky and The Undertaker. It's a side-scrolling beat 'em up style game. Watch this pedigree. Oh my, you're just hitting a random referee with a pedigree. And how about this construction worker? Oh no, you just got a pedigree too. Oh, hello officer, how's your day going? Oh, probably really bad because you just got hit with a pedigree on metal grating. I will say this though, I am begging for an updated game like this. A side-scrolling WWE style beat 'em up with the current roster. Sign my ass up, please. To the Game Boy Advance we go for WWF Road to WrestleMania, and you're about to see the worst wrestling game you probably ever seen in your life. Hulk Hogan coming down the ring here, and this game, you can tell by the gameplay, this game just stinks. It is just not, it is not good by any stretch of the imagination, but hey, they got a pedigree. Let's get a 3 count here and get the hell away from here. Thank you. Along comes the game that overtook WrestleMania 2000 for the best wrestling game intro. I thought the actual game was gonna look like that. It doesn't, but SmackDown Just Bring It. Still a big step forward, I think, over the first 2 SmackDown games. They really started to hone in on their identity and what they were trying to do as far as, you know, their place in wrestling games. Entrances starting to look a little better. We got some water physics. No mist, but he blows you a little kiss. Same difference, really. At this point in time, there were multiple wrestling games coming out per year, and they were all from different companies, so they all felt really different. And this was just such a cool time to be, you know, a wrestling and gaming fan, because you had a lot to choose from. And the games at the time were so hot that every console wanted to be involved, which brings us to WWF Raw for the Xbox. This was an Xbox exclusive game. Not sure who this gentleman here on the screen is. Now, personally, I didn't have the original Xbox growing up. That's just not a console that I had in my possession, so I didn't play this till later on. And, you know, I wasn't super impressed. It was a little bit clunky. It didn't really add anything to the genre, but it's on the list. We got a pedigree, and we're keeping it rolling. That very same year, Nintendo jumps back into the wrestling games mix with WrestleMania X8. This game itself wasn't the greatest start for Nintendo, but it would lay the foundation for what was going to come in the Nintendo series, because the next few wrestling games that come out on GameCube are probably in like the top 10 of my personal favorite games. So once we get to those, I'm going to remind you that these are some games that you should go back and check out for yourself. But the GameCube was off to a great start. However, here comes the Game Boy Advance once again to make one of the worst wrestling games ever. Road to WrestleMania X8. Same style and gameplay elements as before. I don't think they changed anything up from the previous iteration of this game, which also sucked. I'm just trying to run just to get out of here. Swooping in to save the day, though, is SmackDown Shut Your Mouth. This is the second SmackDown game on the PS2. You could tell they were really trying to hone in the presentation on this with the lighting and the shadows. And look, we actually got full spit all around this time, going out and going forward. Look, oh, I felt that through the screen. That's crazy. Shout out to YouTube sensation Maven here for taking this pedigree. The SmackDown games at this point were on fire. They could do no wrong. It looked like they weren't slowing down anytime soon. But here comes Nintendo with WrestleMania 19 on the GameCube, and visually, this is the best looking wrestling game so far. I mean, the textures on Triple H, the whole entrance, everything. Just visually, this game was absolutely cooking at this time. The gameplay itself, too, was a lot of fun. This is a game that even today, I would absolutely go back and play, and that goes for most of the GameCube games. Very similar to the SmackDown style, but still kind of had its own feel. These were great. I thought these games were really great, and you should go back and try them if you haven't. Back to the Xbox for WWE Raw 2. This one you don't really have to go back and try if you haven't. Very similar to the first Raw. Wasn't a huge fan when I, finally was able to play these. It just felt a little slow, a little clunky. But again, having different wrestling games on different consoles all releasing so close to each other, like, that's so sick, and I wish that would happen today. On to what is probably my personal favorite on this entire list, SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. Triple H was the world champion at the time. I mean, what can you even really say about SmackDown Here Comes the Pain other than it just absolutely rules? It's arcadey enough to where certain things are like over the top and very visually appealing, but just as a game, it controls very well. It's fun to play. They oh my God, they just knocked it out of the park with this one. And Purple Triple H, he said, get your hands on me. Purple Trunks Triple H is one of my favorites as well. Back to the GameCube for another certified banger, WWE Day of Reckoning. Again, Nintendo's coming in. Look at these graphics. At this time, this is the best looking wrestling game that has been released up to this date. And coming from Nintendo is kind of, unexpected, almost out of left field a little bit. But again, Day of Reckoning, WrestleMania 19, these GameCube games are really starting to like flesh themselves out and have their own feel and style. The modes that these games had too, there's a very cool like revenge mode. I think WrestleMania 19 had revenge mode, but the Day of Reckoning games were so good. And again, highly recommend them. And to bring the mood down once again, we got WWE Survivor Series for the Game Boy Advance. None of these games are different at all. They all play exactly the same, and they all suck. They suck. This is the last one on Game Boy Advance, thankfully. Thank baby Jesus. But fear not, folks, because we are entering a whole new world here. WWE SmackDown versus Raw for the PS2. They had a really cool intro that like recapped the previous SmackDown games. You want to talk about an advancement in a series, SmackDown versus Raw. The writing was on the wall that, you know, wrestling games were about to get real serious. It still had a lot of the fun gameplay elements of some of the previous SmackDown games, but the presentation was, you know, starting to lean a little more realistic, a little more like what you would kind of see on TV and stuff like that. But I don't think they had any idea what they were starting with this first game. On to what would be the final wrestling game that came out exclusively on the Xbox, WrestleMania 21. This game is so hard to find. Shout out to Sean O'Connor for this footage. I can't find this game anywhere. Not a playable copy, not a working anything. So shout out to the internet. How about a special entry here? Because this one was a mobile game, WWE Aftershock for the Nokia Engage. The best looking wrestling game I've ever seen in my life. I'll tell you what though, as stinky as this game is, it was better than the Game Boy Advance ones. I'll tell you that. It's better than the Game Boy Advance ones. So crazy actually owning a Nokia Engage, but then playing a wrestling game on it? What a wild time this was for the world. This was 2004, I think. But thankfully, Nintendo steps back into the kitchen for Day of Reckoning 2. They took everything from Day of Reckoning, turned up the knob, turned up the volume, and again, they had another, in my opinion, another hit on their hands. The Day of Reckoning games are very good. They have a sick little feel of their own. The presentation makes it look different enough from the SmackDown games and everything. Again, I will never not recommend these games to people because they look great and they're fun to play. Up next, SmackDown vs. Raw 2006. Now, I know we're getting into the territory where probably a lot of the people that have been watching my content for a while, this is around the time where a lot of you guys started getting into wrestling games. I feel like I hear that a lot in the comments. And 2006 is always spoken about very positively throughout my community is what I found. GM mode introduced itself into the fray and wrestling games were never the same after that. But you can see with SmackDown vs. Raw 2006, they were really trying to put the presentation up to just a whole other level. And what comes after SmackDown vs. Raw 2006, you might ask? SmackDown vs. Raw 2007. We are finally moving into a new generation of consoles. This was the first wrestling game to come out on the Xbox 360. This is actually the PS2 version that you're looking at right here, but this was the start of a new generation of consoles, a brand new era in gaming, so they knew they had to come out swinging with 2007. They took GM mode to another level. The gameplay itself, when I was playing these back to back, it felt a little slower than some of the previous games. I'm not sure if that was probably on purpose. They were starting to lean a little more into the simulation style gameplay, which we of course will get back to as this video goes on. But that was of course followed by SmackDown vs. Raw 2008 featuring ECW. And this is easily the best looking wrestling game that had come out to date. I mean, just night and day to some of the previous games. Even to just 2006 and 2007, the lighting and the shadows and the graphics on a completely new level here. We are fully into the 360 PS3 era, and they took absolute advantage of that with these graphics and gameplay. 2008 kind of gets mixed reviews here and there. I don't think it's too bad. I prefer some of the later SmackDown vs. Raws, but 2008 was a pretty good feather in the cap for the SmackDown vs. Raw series. And of course, what follows 2008? SmackDown vs. Raw 2009. This one, I feel like of all the SmackDown vs. Raw games, I probably have the least memory of for some reason. I think I just didn't put as many hours into this one, maybe as some of the other SmackDown vs. Raw games. But basically very similar to 2008. They started changing up the control schemes a little bit. And, you know, the style that you will see going forward really started to show itself around this time. Then out of left field comes WWE Legends of WrestleMania featuring Hunter Hearst Helmsley, a complete switch up from, you know, the game and the cerebral assassin that we've seen in the previous wrestling games. This game, it's an anomaly, man, because like I see how it could be good and could have been, you know, pretty sweet. The control scheme was completely different. It kind of had its own visual style. You had to do like a whole quick time event just to hit your finisher. But I appreciated the notion of the game. I just think it fell short in a lot of areas. It was very cool how you could actually import some of your SmackDown 2009 roster into the game. That was a pretty sick feature. But they came right back with SmackDown versus Raw 2010, right back to business. And man, this is where a lot of fond memories also lie for me. The road to WrestleManias in these games, the general overall gameplay and style. I really enjoyed the SmackDown versus Raw games around this time. They looked great. I mean, cinematic / simulation, little arcadey style. What more could you want? Oh, I know what you want. Another SmackDown versus Raw 2011. They bumped the saturation and the colors up crazy. The spits looking good. Look at the two-piece. Look at this. A lot of volume on that. I felt that one. Little did anyone know, though, that this would be the final SmackDown versus Raw game. It started with the original SmackDown versus Raw, made it all the way to 2011 before they felt it was time to switch things up with the main line of games. And usually when that happens, they'll throw a little curveball in between, right? And that curveball was an amazing game that I love so much. WWE All Stars. I know it gets kind of mixed reviews, but personally, I loved the look at Triple H. That's just like what he looks like on a regular basis. I love the over-the-top visuals. The gameplay was just second to none, in my opinion. I mean, it looked so sick. It was so fun to play. They tried to recreate this, later on, which I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about, and we'll get to it towards the end of the video. But look at this pedigree. 900 feet in the air, smacking them down on the ground. Ugh. You will never hear me say a bad word about All Stars, man. You just won't. With the SmackDown vs. Raw series finished, it was time to move on to WWE 12. And they really took the simulation and presentation style to the next level. In my opinion, this is where things started to move a little further away from the way that I personally like my wrestling games. It wasn't a bad game by any means. It wasn't a bad game at all. But some of those quirks and little elements that made the games what they were starting to disappear around this time. WWE 13 followed it up. And if you ask me to compare or tell you the difference between WWE 12 and WWE 13, I got nothing for you, because I played them back to back. Couldn't really tell the difference. They felt almost like the exact same game. But again, writing on the wall for where this game was about to go. Fortunately, though, where it went from here, at least for a year, looked pretty good. And that game was WWE 2K14. Personally, I think the best game that has 2K in front of it. They've been doing this for about a decade now, 2K14 to 2K24. And if you said I had to pick just one 2K game to play as far as the wrestling series go, it would be this one. Create a story. The universe mode, I think, was popping off in this one too. Create a finisher. Just so much stuff in this game. And it was a ton of fun to play. It was the first appearance of shaved head Triple H, which at the time was insane to see. I still remember him putting out that first picture where he first cut his hair and everybody was freaking out. No one had any idea what was going on. You know, Brodus Clay, I'm gonna give you a little two-piece here because I like this game that much. 2 pedigrees for Brodus. Somebody call his mama, because the 2K era is officially upon us. Hold on to your butts. The Xbox One and PS4 have now entered the chat with WWE 2K15. Look at this game. In comparison to every wrestling game that has come before this, look at this. It is not even close. Just visually, this new generation of consoles took these games to the next level. Visually. Let me emphasize that again. Visually. Gameplay wise, there's some questionable things about it. 2K15 is not a game that I would go back and play if I'm looking to have a lot of fun in a wrestling game. And unfortunately, that trend, in my opinion, continues for a little bit. WWE 2K16 follows the year later, and I have very fond memories of these games, 15 and 16, because I mean that's when my channel, really started to grow and people started to actually watch my content. So, in that regard, I'll always have fond memories for these games. But 15, 16, 17, you start to kind of see the repetitiveness of the game, not really making too many advancements. Graphically, 17 looks better than, say, 15, right? But as far as the gameplay goes, nothing is really changing. They're not adding too many modes. It's really kind of same old around this time. Now, I would say the same about WWE 2K18, but something about 18 that I don't know if it was the lighting or the shadows, they made 18 kind of really have its own, I don't want to say unique visual look, but I can tell the difference between 18 and the ones before it because of the slight difference in presentation. But again, not to sound like a broken record, that's really all that was changing around this time was, oh, let's tweak the lights a little bit, let's make the shadows a little different. Gameplay elements were exactly the same. This continued into 2K19, and 2K19, if you had the PC version of this game, that's really what kept this game alive for so long, especially what came after it, because the mods for 2K19, that's really when the modding scene for 2K started to take off in a big way, because people were modding the hell out of 19 because of a game called WWE 2K20, the bastard child of the 2K series. Man, this game was just clunky and broken. It looked great. Again, visually, it looks awesome. This game looks so sweet, but just poor functionality, nothing new in there. You know, I think 2K themselves would tell you that they really dropped the ball with 2K20. Their response to that, which was a good idea in hindsight, was WWE 2K Battlegrounds. They said, all right, let's put this main 2K series on hold, take a little bit of a break, and bring a more arcadey style wrestling game out. Sort of along the lines of All Stars, although this game, in my opinion, doesn't hold a candle to All Stars. The unlocking superstars animation, though, is pretty cool. Having them, you know, bust out of their little figure packaging is pretty sweet. I had to unlock Triple H just to do this video. I didn't know that he wasn't going to be unlocked as one of the main characters right off the bat. But huge pedigree right there. Again, getting a lot of height off the ground, trying to invoke the same feelings as All Stars, but just fell a little bit short. So 2K made the decision to skip 2K21, take a year off, and put another year into working on 2K22. Look at this game. It paid off in a major way. This was, in a lot of people's eyes, 2K's last chance with this series, and they came back after that little hiatus from 2K20, and they showed that they were going to start really honing in on this series. 2K22 was a great start after the, the failure that was 2K20, and that continued into 2K23. Visually continues to be looking amazing, starting to add a few more little features and gimmicks back into it. The gameplay is at a much better pace. It's a little more enjoyable than it was previously, and we finally started to feel like, hey, maybe we're not just gonna get the same exact game year after year. Hold up! Who the hell is this interrupting my pedigree video? It's an Uso. But which one is it? Coming out to save Roman Reigns' bloodline is thicker than water. Oh, Jay! Oh, smacked him with a chair. Oh, my goodness. And Roman's crawling. He's crawling. He's crawling. He stopped. All right, he stopped. It's fine. Now, before we get to our final game on the list, we want to give a little honorable mention shout out to some of the mobile games that Triple H has appeared in. Immortals, which was a completely over-the-top mobile fighting game. It actually looked pretty sick. WWE Mayhem is on the list as well. WWE Champions, a lot of mobile games also featuring Triple H. This dude was in a lot of games. But the most current and most recent as of the recording of this video, WWE 2K24. I would put this right under WWE 2K14 as the best game in the 2K series. Oh my God, Bad Bunny. I'm trying to do the damn entrance for the final. Here comes freaking. All right, whatever. That's what you want to do, Bunny? This is what you want to do? You want to interrupt the cerebral assassin 2K24 pedigree. And ladies and gentlemen, that is a pedigree with Triple H in every single WWE game. Thank you guys so much for stopping by. Make sure you hit that thumbs up button as hard as you possibly can. We got a lot of other finisher videos on the channel. If you haven't seen them, feel free to go check them out. A lot of stuff coming your way. Thank you guys so much for the support. Stay locked in. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.